Hey everyone, welcome back to K-Korner, the channel where we dive into the wild world of entitled people and their unbelievable stories. Hope you enjoy it, and without further ado, let's go. I'm 30 female working a small business. We have a manager who has been working here all her life. She has her own favorites in the office. These favorites are allowed to break every rule and do whatever they want without being questioned. Those who are not her favorites are always under scrutiny and loaded with work responsibilities that are to be done by her favorites. Since I started the job, for whatever reason she made me target for her hate, I am always respectful to her however she likes to make my life hell over everything. Initially I was given work responsibilities equivalent to 4 persons' work. Now fast forward a few years, I'm still doing work of 2 persons' job. She always throws tantrum like kid every time I get off. She goes to extra miles to create issues on days I am off and blames everything on me. She even made issues when I was hospitalized and asked our boss that, why do I get special treatment? I am going on long vacation. I had told our boss about my plans and had it pre-approved even before making any bookings for stay or ticket. I put it on calendar 3 months in advance with note that it's been pre-approved. My manager was supposed to take extra off so she can have extra long weekend. However, our owner said she will be off that week as well. Our owner didn't ask the manager to cancel her off or whatever, but our manager took it upon herself and canceled it. After doing that, she turned towards me and told me since I have to cancel mine, I'm canceling your vacation as well, which is scheduled in 2 months from now. I looked at her, and I'm like, what if? I went to her desk, which is right outside where our boss is, and told her that she may cancel it however. Then she has to refund the money I spent on booking my flights and stays and activities, which are non-refundable. An amount totals to $3,000 plus whatever my boyfriend spent too, and it will be something she needs to do something out of her pocket since our boss is not asking me to cancel. But you are. Our boss looked at us and just shrugged, knowing that she has been playing games with me since beginning and not wanted to get involved. Guess what? I am still going on the vacation. I am also going through everyday torture of her petty comments about my vacation. But I am gonna count it as victory as small it is. I am fuming, but willing to provide context. First, I've been working with children for a long time. Even the most excitable toddlers are willing to communicate politely if asked. This is why I'm easily aggravated when adults are unable to compose themselves in public. Second, I've been having issues with my ID being lost in the mail. It's been difficult to iron out, and I've been running around for months reordering them. I was at the post office today, mid-December, yikes, to speak with a supervisor. I was lucky to have arrived when I did as a huge surge of people trying to ship holiday packages showed up almost immediately after. I'm about 10-15 people behind and I'm in a bit of a hurry, but willing to wait because I can see employees scrambling around trying to help customers. Always plan ahead, I chatted a bit about the long line and holiday plans with the girl ahead of me. This is common among extroverts in the US. I suddenly noticed someone walking very close to me on the left side. As soon as there's a couple of feet between myself and the girl in front of me, the wild Karen steps even closer and attempts to casually squeeze between us. I ignore her and close the gap before she can cut in line, which again is extremely long. She's loudly complaining to her teenage son about how she only has 10 minutes, I told. Random name. I'd have it shipped last week. Her son says that they're already late and they should come back tomorrow, so we'll be fine. I'm now third in line. She huffs and begins to walk parallel to me with a huge box, again trying to nonchalantly squeeze in. I try to close the 2-foot gap, but she shoves ahead and I run into her by accident. She looks back at me and frowns. Karen, excuse you? Son, loudly whispering, Mom, let's just go. During this process, she has also run into the girl originally in front of me with her huge box. The girl turns around and is surprised to see a random lady where I used to be. Karen to the girl, I'm in a huge hurry. Can you just move? The girl raises her eyebrows and starts to say something. The clerk calls her forward. She gives me the yikes eyes and heads over to the desk. I say nothing because I'm not trying to make any more of a scene. Karen is called up to the desk at the same time I'm called to an adjacent one. The clerk takes my name and directs me to stand by a door and wait for a supervisor. I head over and can overhear Karen freaking out because the cost of shipping her giant package is more than $40. She demands to speak to a manager, shocker, and the clerk tells her to hang on for a moment. The only supervisor will be at the desk in a few minutes. The supervisor, very nice, named Sherry, opens the top of the split door, calls my name, and I begin explaining my issue. Karen leaves her son and package, storms over, and interrupts. Karen, I've been waiting for 20 minutes, total bullcrap, and I need a supervisor, right? Now, my package. Sherry, cutting her off. I'll be over in just a moment. Go ahead and wait at the desk, please. Karen starts to argue, but OG Sherry tells her again to wait at the desk. Karen then grabs her package, ignores the clerk telling her to wait, and steps right up behind me as Sherry takes notes and copies her information for me. I thank her profusely when I finish and wish her a happy holiday. As I'm walking away, Karen frowns and starts telling Sherry her sob story. Sherry says, for the third time, to wait at the desk. Karen whips around, but by now the clerk has a case of the F-its and has called someone else to his desk. He tells her to go to the back of the line, which has only grown. Sherry takes the brief moment Karen looked away to slam the top part of the door shut. I left before the shrieking started. This happened about 10 years ago. I was at home and my cat was being a little crazy, as cats do. My sister saw my cat scratching on the carpet and made a snarky comment to my mom, who I was living with at the time, that I should get rid of that stupid witch of a cat and get her put down, and started laughing. I, of course, react not so nicely, and she asked me why I'm being a C-word. My sister is a chronic shit-stirrer, so she made me upset, and I left for an event I had to go to. A few hours later, I get a call, and I answer. It was a police officer. I thought the worst and asked what was going on. It turns out my dad was at a bar, and I guess he got a little too tipsy. They said he was lying down next to the building and pooped himself. I, of course, am pretty close to said bar, but my sister was too. I told the police officer on the phone that I was at an event and was not available and to call my sister. I gave him my sister's number and put my phone on Do Not Disturb. I checked my phone an hour later and had 5 missed calls, as well as a bunch of texts from her saying that she got a call from the officer and that Dad needed to be picked up immediately before they took him to the police station. It turns out she went to pick him up and his pants were worse than the officer said. She had to clean him up quite a bit before taking him back home. I had voicemails cussing me out about how she had to pick him up and clean him. I called her back later and asked how it went. She was angry and asked why I couldn't do it. I tell her, sorry, I was too busy putting my stupid bitch of a cat down, and hang up. No, my cat was not put down, and she for sure got the message to not mess with me again. Edit to add context. The carpet was a piece of carpet that was cut out and left over from the house being built. My mom was okay with the cat scratching that piece of carpet. Enjoying the stories yet? If you do, please subscribe, like, and comment. So, to start off, this isn't my story, but one of my best friends, Alyssa, but I was there when it happened. It's something that happened years ago, but we were reminiscing about the past then after seeing a couple other posts similar to this situation. Got talking about it. I have been given permission to talk post about it. My best friend, who we'll call James, met the love of his life, Alyssa, when we were teenagers. Unfortunately, they ended up breaking up over a misunderstanding. A few years later, they ended up meeting again through a mutual friend of ours, Alan, who was her cousin at his birthday party. After reconnecting, they fell back in love, got back together. When they wanted to get married not even a year after dating, his family, mainly parents, thought they were moving too fast, along with the fact they thought she was only after his money. Which wasn't true because she had her own money, as she was doing very well in her career, just as he was. And when his family realized that they apologized, warmed up to her. Unfortunately, roughly 4 years after they were married, he died in a car accident. The house, which he bought not even a month before they got back together, was in his will to go to her and the daughter they shared together. Roughly 6 months after his funeral, his sister, who we'll call Josie, showed up at the house. Alyssa has allowed and still does allow James' family to see their daughter, along with letting them have her for occasional holidays or almost any time they want or the daughter wants to go over. When Josie said that she, her husband, 2 children needed a place, Alyssa was quick to offer them a place to stay until they got back on their feet. The house is a 3-bedroom with a finished walkout basement. Here's where it gets amusing in our eyes. Josie started going off on her, saying how Alyssa needs to move out or find somewhere else to live. That it was only right for Josie, her family, to be the one that has her brother's house. She even said that Alyssa only had it because of him, and now that he's gone, there's no reason for her to be still living there. Josie even went as far as saying James would be rolling in his grave knowing there's lesbian lovers living in his house. I wasn't living there, but was there quite a bit to help out. That it was wrong because she, Alyssa, was cheating on James even before he died with me. Even before he died with me, Josie didn't know why he even stuck with her. Which surprised us both to hear her say, because she always appeared that she liked us both. After they argued more, Alyssa tried multiple times to get her to leave, but of course Josie said she wasn't going to until the house was given to her like it should have been all along. Alyssa eventually called Josie's parents and asked them to come remove their daughter from the house. If they couldn't, she'd be forced to get the authorities involved. Thankfully, they did, but unfortunately, over the next month, Josie showed up and tried multiple times arguing with Alyssa more over who should be living in the house until her parents threatened to take her out of the will. I've been lucky with not encountering Karens up until recently. Honestly, I thought the internet over-exaggerated about these crazy, entitled people. I came to the sad truth these people do exist, and my faith in humanity dropped just a tad more. And just a little more as I'm typing this, coming to the realization, these people are raising the next generation. Anyways, I work in the solar industry, mainly residential, as a service technician. Whenever something goes wrong with a solar PV system, I'm the guy they send out to fix it. I've been doing this long enough to have the knowledge and skill to complete an entire installation by myself, with roof pitch and module, count within reason, that is. Anyways, I went out with one of the crews for an installation as they were short a few guys. So myself and 2 of the other technicians I work with volunteered to help them out. Seemed like a pretty standard job. 40 panels, not a steep roof. Okay, we should be in and out timing, permitting we're finished and back at the shop by 4 or 5 p.m. So we arrive at the house, is what looked to be a pretty rich neighborhood. Homeowner greeted us and even offered to grab us all breakfast. It was a good day so far. So we set up an exclusion zone to prevent anyone from coming too close to the house's equipment, tools, etc. will fall off the roof. I'm on the ground working on building the electrical portion of the system. I've got my music playing, all is good. I've got myself in a good rhythm. I then notice a child, could have been no older than 7, dart past the red tape we had put up and head toward a ladder to the roof and try to start playing on it. Like a human being with common sense, I ran over and told the kid he couldn't play on this and that red tape was up so he couldn't get hurt. And the moment you've all been waiting for, Karen appeared. Man, she had it all, the haircut, the sunglasses, and she had the worst spray tan I've personally seen. It's summer, people just go and get some sun, damn. Karen, don't talk to my son like that. He just wants to play with your tools. Ma'am, I can't allow him to play with our tools. I can't have him or yourself pass that red tape. We put it up for your safety. Karen, oh, he'll be fine. Just tell your workers to not drop anything. Me, who had just lost a couple brain cells from her response, I can tell them to not drop anything all day, but that doesn't exclude the fact accidents happen, and we cannot risk anyone who is a non-worker to be hurt. Now please leave. This is an active work site. Karen, I can do as I please, and so can my son. We're friends with these people, and they let my son play in their yard. You should take a better direction at talking to potential customers, Me, ma'am. Until I have site plans for an installation on your house, how I speak to you is not a concern I have. If I sound cross, I apologize, but I have now told you twice that I cannot have you pass that red tape. So I'm asking once again, please take your son and leave before either of you get hurt. This is an active work site. She grabbed her child arms and stormed off, while also tearing off a section of the exclusion zone tape and storming over to her house 2 doors down. I stood by her trailer to take a breather and began chain smoking. I try not to get stressed out so much. Being my job is already stressful as it is, but I have zero patience for people with no common sense, especially if they're a parent. A little while later, panels are prepped, roof is based out, for anyone who knows about solar installations. We used a rackless system instead of actual rails. We're now just finishing up the electrical before placing the panels into position. I'm running between the basement and the outside area. I get back to outside, punching in some wires when I hear one of my guys yelling from the roof, "Hey, kid, what are you doing?" That immediately caught my attention, as I thought the little kid had run past the exclusion zone tape once again. But my eyes caught a guy running down the road with a solar panel in town. He thankfully wasn't very fast with that he was holding the panel. I darted over to this kid with one of our solar panels and attempted to rip it from his hands, while simultaneously trying not to let it hit the ground. I was able to get my hands on it, but this kid actually put up a fight and tossed the solar panel that put me in an awkward position, and he landed a full-on punch to my chest. Not gonna lie, it did knock the wind out of me a little. But I went into full self-defense mode. The kids wanted to take another shot at me since I didn't completely go down. I immediately put him on the ground without throwing any punches. I didn't know how old this kid was. And I didn't want to get into trouble for hitting a minor, but I wasn't about to let this kid continue to hit me. I'm thankful I have a little background in amateur MMA and a police officer, dad, and older brother who've taught me stuff over the years. So I had the kid down on the ground, pinned, and out comes Karen running, screaming like a banshee. The typical "I'm calling the cops, and you just assaulted my son." I really asked myself if this was happening. Me, your son was stealing a solar panel and punched me in the chest. I had to defend myself. "Karen, I told him to grab the solar panel. My neighbor said I could take one and try it out and see how I like it." At this point, my guys are at my aid, and I tell them to call the cops and keep Karen away from me. As we wait for the cops to show up, this orange-skinned lunatic is ranting how she's going to sue all of us and blah, blah, blah. Cops arrived about 10 minutes later. I removed myself from the kid, and the cops split us all up to take our statements and such. Karen went with her story about how her neighbors said she could borrow a solar panel and try it out. Now, even if he did say that, which he didn't, you can't just let someone take a solar panel because they still belong to the company. Most people who buy solar, finance the panels, and pay them off over the course of the next couple years works a lot like financing a car. It gets to the point where the cops ask if I want to press charges for the assault. The guy whose house we were installing had a security camera system and caught the incident all on tape, so I gladly say yes. No idea when the court proceedings are going to be taking place. I honestly just want this over and done with. I have to start a bit further back than I would like, but context is important so as to understand the size of metaphorical bullet I have managed to dodge. While this tale does contain some small references to military activities, I've avoided all official lingo as it's just easier for most to understand in layman's terms. I know the proper terminology, but it's not really relevant. The star of our show, the entitled parent incarnate, is former military, so maybe it's also a bit petty since it'll irritate him if he ever reads this. Now, the will of the fates has always worked out for me in the end of harrowing situations throughout my entire life. However, it has not been without some mistakes that have taken years to crawl out from under. This mistake being one of them. What follows here is an intricate powder keg of entitled parent foolery that was months in the making without me even realizing it, and it ignited too late for me to avoid a massive blowback. The entitled parent in this flashback of horror is my now ex-fiancé, who I'll refer to as Henry after Henry Jekyll. Henry informed me after a few weeks of dating him that he had a son that was conceived with his ex-wife. His marriage had supposedly ended on an explosive bad note after a decade of verbal and physical abuse. I saw a fixer-upper of a man, and we could easily relate to each other, as my previous marriage was emotional abuse and a costly escape. Solidarity is a powerful bonding agent, even in the best of circumstances, and unbeknownst to me, I was about to descend into the worst. I dated Henry for 2 years, during which he moved into my apartment after only 3 months as we were head over heels for each other, and it was a good move at the time. We spent the entirety of quarantine together. We adopted 2 adorable kittens. I personally financed a new car for him after his old car died, and I gave that man my entire life on a silver platter. Henry had described his son, who I'll refer to as Hyde, as the only light in his life during his marriage, and I took him for his word. Henry's ex-wife will be referred to as Helia, since Helion is usually reserved for children, and Hela is too nice of a namesake. Helia had sole custody of Hyde, and Henry acted the part of loving father who was unjustly wronged in the past. I stupidly believed him and didn't mind that Henry had never actually divorced Helia. After all, my own prior divorce put me in such a financial hole I was understanding that it wasn't the easiest process to endure. Helia agreed to grant Henry some visitation privilege so she could enjoy weekends without Hyde, and this way Henry could rebond with his son. Supposedly a win-win for all of them. I was supportive and happily offered to make Hyde as comfortable as possible should he spend weekends over. When Hyde came over to visit, I immediately noticed that he was a very needy 10-year-old boy of the nth degree. This child had textbook abuse behavioral signs. I would know. My entire childhood was filled with trauma, and I've been in therapy over a decade. Yay. I empathized with Hyde in that I understood where some of his attention-seeking behaviors stemmed from, but didn't enjoy time with him, much as it left me drained and lifeless afterward. Henry assured me that Hyde was a good kid with a good head on his shoulders, but I quickly realized that even if this was the case, which it sometimes appeared to be, Henry did not want to be a parent. Henry loved being a dad, especially a weekends-only dad, but not a parent. Henry wanted someone who was happy with him all the time, who didn't see him as the flawed human he is, and Hyde was perfect for this fallacy. Hyde got everything his heart desired when Henry acquired permission to have Hyde sleep over at my apartment. During these visits, I did my absolute best to cater to Hyde's conversations, bragging and appetite, but it strained me a bit being in a one-bedroom apartment with essentially 2 children to babysit. Henry was irresponsible at best, self-destructive at worst, and I would frequently have to cater to 2 bottomless pits of needs when his son would engage. Hyde was a sore loser in every game I entertained him with, and would always assume he knew more than me about everything. Henry's words were gospel, and mine were newspaper trash in comparison. I learned that this is due to Hyde having zero respect for women much too late to be of any help to this kid. Having to share such a small space with these children motivated me to begin a house purchasing search. After months of effort proved fruitless, Henry suggested I look into military service as the VA home loan can be quite decent. Henry's credit was too poor to get a loan for tomatoes, let alone a house, so the task fell to me. I was dumb and in love, so I figured it was worth looking into. I'm a stubborn stick in the mud on a bad day, and on a good day I will find ways to accomplish Herculean tasks in any way possible, so this was a goal I agreed with. After a lot of trials and error, I wound up enlisting in the U.S. Navy Reserve so I could get my butt back home ASAP and get us that house we wanted. I've done much worse for less, so bring it on boot camp. I'm going to get us a house. Henry accepted a very lucrative job promotion out of state that was due to start the day that I would ship out for training. We lamented the poor timing, but resolved to make the most of it and start a new chapter in our lives. Henry was tasked with uprooting our living space to be closer to his new job, and the fuses to our powder kegs started to twine together. Initially, Henry had moved into my apartment with not much other than the clothes on his back and a handful of weed. Every item in our shared living space was purchased by yours truly, and Henry had assimilated into my apartment without so much as having to buy a spare coffee mug. Henry had never had to move before, and was a bit intimidated by the task appointed to him. I had 1 month of time before I was due to fly away for basic training, after which I was supposed to be gone for 8 months total of provided military training. Basic was to be 2 of those months. I would be leaving my beloved tiny apartment behind to unknown fates and returning to a home I had never set foot in, to support Henry and Hyde. I've been through more stressful situations before, so I resolved to help Henry in the weeks before I left while maintaining my full-time job. Providing notice to my employer that I was moving out of state, working out daily to maintain fitness for basic, and setting sights on the future. I packed up what belongings I could when I was off work during the week, entertained Henry and Hyde on weekends, and resolved that the storm of stress would subside soon. This was only temporary. Henry proposed to me at home over dinner with a promise that when I returned, he'd have started the divorce process. After all, he supposedly had 8 months I'd be gone, and we could begin our future together. There wasn't a ring, but a cute necklace from Stardew Valley that meant the same to me. I trusted Henry with my life, happily granting him durable power of attorney so that he could vacate my apartment for me and handle anything I might need while cut off from the world for training. I knew I would temporarily forfeit my phone, and bills still have to be paid, so sharing my online banking info was an easy decision. I had unwittingly added another barrel to the powder keg pile. The day comes to leave for training. Henry is scheduled for his first shift at his new job out of state. It's only 1 state away, but it's a decent drive. So he wishes me luck, has our cats packed up in his car, and drives off into the sunrise while I'm sitting at my military recruitment office with a backpack and anxiety. I'm to fly the furthest I've ever flown from home, but at least I get to come back relatively quickly, being just a reservist after all. I get to training, make the final required phone call to Henry letting him know I made it, power off my phone for confiscation, and endure the start of boot camp underprepared and overwhelmed. After a few weeks and a happy mandatory phone call later, Henry wrote me a few letters via an app that sends mail to recruits in training. I know now that if I hadn't have informed him of this convenience, he would have never bothered to put effort into writing me at all. Henry sent some photos of our cats, pictures of Hyde at the state fair, and filled me in on a few things that were happening while I was gone. While in training, I was hastily reassigned to a job that would only require 1 month of training after graduation compared to the original plan of 6 months. Reasons for this development are personally confidential, but it wasn't something I could argue. Initially cripplingly disappointed at my job changing, I was somewhat happy to be returning home in time for Christmas. A very kind base staff member permitted me to call Henry to inform him of this bittersweet news, as I was a teary-eyed emotional wreck at this point in time. Henry was audibly ecstatic to hear that I'd be home the very first week of December, and he had found an apartment near his new job for us. Henry was supposed to come to my basic training graduation. He was informed of the date via a letter, sent out the very first week I was in training, but failed to plan something 2 months in advance. I was disheartened that nobody would be there to congratulate me for this small milestone, but it was okay. I had a new home waiting for me, and that was motivation enough. I asked to borrow a phone from a fellow graduate's mom after the event, and she obliged so I could inform Henry to expect open communication in a few short days when I would be sent off to my training school. Enjoyed my first weekend off base and felt like life was finally going to calm down. Unbeknownst to me, Henry, Hyde, and Helia were fumbling with a box of matches next to our powder kegs. Henry and I texted back and forth every day when I got to my training school. Phone calls were exchanged, plans made for the future, concert tickets purchased for the following year, etc. However, all was not well in communicating. Henry informed me that Hyde had sexually assaulted a fellow schoolmate. This was our countdown to the apocalypse, and I didn't realize it. Hyde had hit, groped, and screamed at a poor female student at his school. Remember, Hyde is 10 years old, to suck his bees after smacking her butt and trying to grab her chest. Hyde did this in passing period with other students present, after rubbing his hands together like a cartoon supervillain. Henry informed me of these details as he witnessed the school security camera footage. Henry sounded like a slightly disappointed dad, but there wasn't genuine anger at his son for the severity of behavior displayed. Henry had successfully persuaded school administration to not suspend his son, and the assaulted girl's parents put their daughter into therapy as Hyde received no punishment other than some yard work at Henry's parents' house. Henry somehow convinced the poor girl's parents not to press charges against Hyde. I was livid. How could Henry's son ever think this behavior was okay? As a survivor of sexual abuse, I couldn't fathom a child willingly doing that to another peer without having a few screws loose. I informed Henry that I hoped the other parents were going to press charges, since Hyde's response when asked why he did it was that he thought it'd be funny. Henry was audibly upset and ranted that it wouldn't do his son any good to be labeled a sex offender, and these kinds of stupid consequences wouldn't help him since he's just a child. Henry informed me that Helia agreed with him and that he couldn't believe I sided with the poor schoolgirl's parents in wanting to mindlessly persecute his innocent son Hyde. I was flabbergasted that Henry's behavior had flipped so strongly into defending Hyde even after the security camera footage. Hyde maliciously assaulted a female classmate, needlessly traumatized her, and was getting yard work as a consequence. I resolved that I wasn't Hyde's mother, but when I returned home, I'd see where the situation had developed. I called Henry on my first Saturday in Mississippi, and he didn't pick up the phone. He had never missed a call before, but I figured life happened and he'll text back eventually. He does reply a few hours later and communication is back to normal. Frequent calls and texts are abound all throughout the next few days, until Tuesday. Tuesday, October 26, 2021. Henry texts me that he needs to talk to me. I call him at the time he has told me to call him, and he's at work. He asked me to call him at work on purpose. He tells me that he slept with Helia and has rekindled his relationship with her. Powder, keg, ignition. He slept with Helia on Saturday, and I had called him in the middle of it. That's why he didn't respond. It took him 3 whole days to gather what little manhood he had to even let me know what he did. Henry states that his marriage never got closure, so he's going to pursue Helia again. He's keeping our cats because Hyde loves them, but I can have my belongings back when I return home since they're in a storage locker anyway. This chain of events culminated in one fact to burn down our house of cards. I believed Hyde deserved consequences for sexual assault, and Henry deemed me unfit to parent his son, so he ran to someone he knew would support his belief. Helia. I now had no home to go to. Henry had packed up and vacated my apartment. My belongings were stuffed in a storage unit out of state. My car was at Henry's parents' house. My bank account had one small military paycheck in it, and no savings as I gave Henry access to my entire nest egg. I look into my finances with a wary heart, and I have nothing left. Not even my old retirement fund, which I ended up having to pay extra taxes on, F you, Henry. I was broke, homeless, jobless, and even though I was in the military, I refused to go active duty because I didn't have anything left in me to give at the time. I was such an anxious wreck in the weeks following, I lost 15 pounds in a month. Word spread that I was cheated on and dumped by my long-term fiancé, unfortunately common in the military. So aside from occasional friendly offers for drinks, nobody dared interact for fear of the piss-off attitude I was happy to share. I was going to fix this without Henry, and without Uncle Sam forcing me to live somewhere away from my now increasingly vital friend support circle back home. Reserves I would stay, but I had work to do. I was stuck in Mississippi, over 2,000 miles away from home, and I had to focus on graduating this training school. In between class, I'm updating my resume and applying for jobs in my home state, calling in all favors from friends for when I come back so I can be picked up from the airport and have a temporary place to stay, and mourning never seeing my 2 cats again. The mother of one of my childhood best friends saw me posting on social media and quietly sent me some funds via PayPal even though I hadn't spoken to her in years. I cried immediately when I saw her deposit. Everyone I knew emerged from the woodwork to help, even when I was nowhere near them. I wouldn't have made it through without everyone, and I dodged the bullets that were Henry and Hyde. I did it. I made it. I graduated, made it home, and found my feet. Almost 1 year later, I have a decent, albeit overpriced, but what isn't overpriced in this economy, apartment, a nice roommate, an adorable cat who is now friends with my roommate's kitten, and a great job that I adore and pays well. I drill at a nearby Navy base once a month, and my unit is a bunch of lovely dads who have adopted me into their fold, with promises of tracking Henry's address for consequences if I ever requested it. Henry doesn't deserve even that much effort, though, so I'll let sleeping dogs lie, knowing that Hyde will continue to be a horrible child. Amidst my belongings, some of Henry's own paperwork got mixed in, and inside those files I found horror that cemented my resolve that I am better off without Henry and Hyde. Court documents, an arrest statement, school records, you name it, there was a negative form for it. Henry had assaulted Hyde a few years prior in a drunk rage, and Hyde had a multitude of prior behavioral issues unknown to me at the time of hosting this demon under my roof. Hyde had been expelled from one school, suspended at another, and had documented incidents at his current elementary. Hyde had sharpened popsicle sticks and threatened to stab students, cursed at and spit on teachers, assaulted classmates, and instigated fights. Henry's son was a nightmare of a bully, but Henry was so blinded by wanting to be a friend instead of a parent that Hyde never faced a single dire consequence. The only part of my life that's still broken is my credit. Turns out being homeless is expensive, and some items I can't get back from Henry. Henry's mom is continually disappointed in her son, and she helped me get most of my belongings back, and even some of my houseplants survived since Henry's kindly sister took it upon herself to see some make it through for me. Henry's sister and mother have been lovely to me, and they never stop apologizing for Henry's behavior, even though it's not their fault. Update. Thank you for the wonderful responses, and I apologize for the lack of formatting. I had no idea this would be such a popular post. I was just thinking about these events yesterday as my breakup. Anniversary is near, so I just word dumped via Mobile. Some are wondering why I did what I did for Henry in the first place, and I admit I did too much for him, but I saw his potential as a person instead of what he actually was. We were best friends for almost a year prior to us dating. I didn't know his troubled past, and while we were together, he genuinely improved. What I failed to realize is that his improvement depended solely on my physical presence and dependability. When I left for training, Henry lost his rock. He panicked at having to function, and instead of manning up and building a ship to ride the storm, he was slowly engaging with his ex-wife prior to the catalyst of our disagreement about Hyde. Imagine you know someone, your best friend maybe, for a few years. You know this person. You understand them. They would never betray you or your trust. One day you're out on a trail together, business as usual, when all of a sudden this person whips out a crowbar and savagely beats you with it. This friend leaves you alone and runs away, and when asked why, they tell you, "I don't know." This is the emotional equivalent of what Henry did, and I was so caught off guard it took months to process. My only thoughts were why, and how could he do this and be okay with himself? And I may never get this response out of him, but it took a while to recover from this emotionally and be able to speak of it freely. Thanks for joining us. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more captivating stories. Share your own experiences, opinions in the comments below, and let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay tuned for more epic tales.